Hello, everybody. Good afternoon or good morning, depending on where you're located. For those of us joining us again, welcome back. We do these monthly, and we're so excited to see kind of some repeat attendees. And for those that are new to this Innovating Out Loud segment, thank you so much for being here. This has been such a fun series for Joanne and I to do each month, and we get the honor and privilege of talking to just some insanely brilliant and talented people. Jayshree is, of course, no exception to that. She'd maybe the bar for that. So we're so excited today to be talking with Jayshree Sate. She is a corporate scientist at 3M, their first ever chief science advocate. She also was recently inducted into the National Academy of Engineering. She's on the Thinkers 50 radar. And if you follow any of her work, you will very quickly see she's just a tremendous thought leader, thinker, inventor, and is kind of leading R&D amongst other things as we navigate this AI future. And so today, per the title, You'll Say It Ugly, and Innovating Out Loud. We're really excited just to learn from you, Jayshree, and kind of help you educate all of us and share learning. So thank you so much for being here. I'll let you introduce yourself quickly and just kind of say hello, and Joanne, maybe same thing, and then we'll dive right into the good stuff.
Well, thank you, Taryn. I'm excited to be here. I have had the privilege of meeting Joanne not once but twice, and so great to get connected. And let's see where it takes us today.
Yeah, and I'm not going to take up much airtime today because Jayshree has so much to share. For those who don't know me, I'm one of the co-founders of Regenerous Labs. I'm a former director of innovation at Microsoft, also a Thinkers 50 radar member. That's how Jayshree and I met. And I snuck in through a side door because a Microsofty friend and I published a book called The Insider's Guide to Innovation at Microsoft. And I'll just leave it there and let's talk to Jayshree. I'm excited.
Yes, awesome. Well, let's just kind of start, Jayshree, and you explaining to us and everybody on kind of your journey at 3M and why it's kind of become, your path and your home.
Well, that's a great question to start with because in 3 days I would have completed 33 years here.
Ah,
Wow.
congratulations.
Thank you. And I must say that back in the day when I joined, people didn't move around as much as they do today.
Hmm.
And I wasn't much of a planner of, careers, if you will. Honestly, when I joined 3M, I didn't know what I didn't know. I just wanted to do good work and very much held the belief that if you do good work, good things will happen. And a little bit about my background, I really never thought of myself as the science type when I was growing up. I was just
Hmm.
encouraged by my parents to go into the field. My dad was an engineering professor. We lived on campus. I grew up surrounded by STEM professionals. And from the day I entered 3M going in, I knew that I was probably not qualified to work on whatever I was working on. And the reason why I say that is my master's was in, let's see if I can even say it anymore, the modeling of manganese bismuth eutectic in space.
Okay.
And my doctoral work was on making diamond-like carbon thin films. And at 3M, I started in the division that made closures to keep diapers on wiggly babies. So I love saying that I went from diamonds to diapers and I'd never seen either one of them before. I grew up in India. It was cloth diapers back then. But I knew something about myself. I was very willing to learn, very curious, hardworking, motivated, and always full of ideas. And some of these ideas were quite disruptive, specifically to the folks entrenched in the technology. But with a lot of help, I pursued them and it worked out because of 3M's 15% culture. You can work on things that you think are important in 15% of your time, no questions asked. And our technical forum, our technical community, and soon enough, we were running this newbies concept in the plant, in the factory. And it was a big failure for what I intended it to do. It opened up so many new opportunities in different parts of the world with the exact same concept. So, long story short, my 15% idea was a new product. I won the Corporate Technical Excellence Award. I got two entrepreneurial 3M grants to pursue the idea further, and I got a promotion, all within 2 years of joining. So
Amazing.
now, if you ask me why I stayed, how can I say why I would leave? I mean, not an expert, but I knew I could thrive here with my T skills, working with all these great I people, with the depth. And what a great experience for someone who was starting out, didn't know anything about what they were doing. And so, what that taught me was that I need to be in a place where I can think about the next normal and all the possibilities that opens up. I need to be in a place where I can challenge old truths to create new technology building blocks, and a place where I am empowered to take action where there is a window of time. And I've done this over and over again in my 3 decades here, gaining that actionable insight, strategic foresight, and moving the needle with what is within my own operational oversight. Sorry, that's a framework. I always think in frameworks. Now I'm at the highest level you can obtain as a scientist at 3M awards, and I owe it all to a culture of empowerment, emphasis on collaboration, and a communal context of improving lives. And that inspires me every day. So I see a challenge, define the opportunity, and I throw myself into the problem. So I recently raised my hand to lead these use cases for generative AI and R&D at 3M again, an area I'm not qualified to work on, but wanted to explore. And you know what? 3M makes it possible, and that's why I stay.
That's
I just
amazing.
want to I want to put an underline on the fact that that first 2 years, all of that great stuff you achieved was on something that failed. Because that right there, that's the difference at the cultural level of saying you invest in innovation and creativity and exploration and actually following through on it. The fact that you were rewarded and promoted and it led to this amazing career on a failure. That's the way it works. And a
Yep.
lot of companies can't figure that out.
Yeah. Failure in one might be a success in another. And that's
Yeah.
basically it. If you're directionally moving in the right, sort of direction, good things will happen, and you may be able to use that advancement somewhere else.
Yeah.
Mhm. And I love too the 15%. I had, that's part of the culture, but there's so many people where you see innovation show up on their about pages or in their values or in their principles, but there's really nothing behind that kind of structurally or, like sound. It's like we believe this. Like, well, if you don't create though the intentional space and formats and mechanisms to actually do that. They're words. And I think
Yeah.
this is such an amazing just example of, I think people connect 3M with innovation just inherently, but to hear why and to really understand it's because 15% of every one of their team's time is for it. It hits at a different level, right? And how people kind of see and can feel the tangible nature of saying it versus putting practices in place that actually, breed it.
Totally.
Awesome. Well, you mentioned kind of leading Gen, AI at 3M as it relates to today. Just talk to us about that. Like what have you learned? What surprises you? What comes to mind? Everybody's right kind of figuring out Gen AI in this season.
Yeah, so there's a lot of stuff going on with AI and machine learning and use cases at 3M. I'm specifically just leading the use of generative AI in R&D.
Okay.
And there is so much hype and hoopla and hubris and noise, and everyone's talking about what it can do and all of that. But the way I'm approaching is more of this: how are scientists going to deal with it? What do we have to unravel, and the journey we have to travel, and how things change and don't change? And what I
Mm.
realize is the important piece in all of this is still that journey from data to information to knowledge to wisdom. I like the
Mhm.
DIKW hierarchy. There are other things out there. Essentially, the concept is you start here and then something comes about that says, okay, we ought to do this, and we do something. That's the journey, right? That is important. And AI can accelerate every stage, but it really can't replace the human work that is needed
Hmm.
at each one.
Hmm.
And so I have sort of developed this whole idea around each one of them. Data, what do we need to do? Information, what do we need to do? Knowledge, what do we need to do? And wisdom, as we develop use cases for Gen AI and R&D. Actually, I have four frameworks that I could share, starting with data, the foundation, and walking up to wisdom. Is that something I should do maybe here?
Yeah,
Absolutely.
I think it
We
would be awesome. The other thing I would love is as you're explaining the frameworks, kind of connect the dots into like how and when are you using those as you're exploring Gen AI and R&D context, so people understand both the framework and then how it's applied and kind of when would you use it and all that. That would be wonderful.
Yeah, I think to your point, Aaron, being somebody in the trenches, I kind of know exactly how things will work and what
Hmm.
myself and my peers will not reject, accept, and all of that. I think
Sure.
that is the vantage point that I bring to everything is my ears in the trenches. Just so that your audience understands, I'm a scientist at 3M. I do not have a whole bunch of direct reports, but you ain't getting your money back. So I'm not, I am in the trenches, and I think this is a unique opportunity for me to do something about acceptance and usage of this technology. So for
Hmm.
data, I think when you're an R&D, not all data is created equal. So I say you have to really trace your data. And what do I mean by that? Is it temporal? Is it current enough to be relevant? Because I don't want to hear, well, we did this market study, but that was like 5 years ago. Things have changed tremendously. So all the time we have to ask, is it temporal? Second, is it reliable? Is it coming from a trustworthy source? Third, is it analytical? Is it structured for the question we are seemingly asking it now? Is it contextual? Does it account for this specific customer, this specific market, this specific technology? That context is so important. So, and the next one is it empirical? Is it really grounded in actual evidence? So that's what I mean by trace. Temporal,
Hmm.
reliable, analytical, contextual, and empirical. And most AI failures, they don't start with the model. They start with untraced data sort of going in. Once you've got this untraced data, you've got a problem. So that's what I say about the data, and then that's the foundation.
it,
Okay.
I had a funny thought just because of your diapers, diamonds to diapers. I'm like crap in, crap out.
How about
And
that?
the two things I see, and Karen, I'd love to hear what you see. The two pieces of that framework I see most often overlooked by engineers and designers and others, less so designers, but definitely us engineers, temporal and contextual. And without those two dimensions, you could really go in the wrong direction and just be basing everything you're doing on the wrong starting point.
Hmm. Yeah, I think the amount of times I say the word context in a week is probably like exceeding the amount that's okay. And it's like, oh, here's Tara again. She's talking about context. But I find in a world of AI and data, like the context in which you're sharing information, the context in which you're working, the context in who you're talking to is more important than ever. And then the other thing I love about that is that's where the human is absolutely like indispensable. The contextual understanding of who you're talking to, when, where, how you're using tools, what are you trying to do, at what level of fidelity are you at? Like context is so important to move anything forward. And so I think within your framework, it's great. And even larger than that, just in how we're working with all the tools and information and possibilities at our disposal, the context in which you're using it and what you're trying to use it for becomes absolutely critical to moving it forward.
Right. So after data comes information.
Hmm.
And here, what I say is you have to track fast.
Mm.
Not fast as in rushed, but fast as another framework. So here, I think you have to track whether we are grounding ourselves in facts. So, what is really the verifiable reality? Second, are we naming our assumptions explicitly?
Mm.
Sometimes you just dress up your assumptions as facts.
Mhm.
Hmm.
Sometimes we are loath to vocalize the assumptions, but we have to in the age of AI. So here are the verifiable facts. Here are the assumptions explicitly stated. The next is scenarios. What if this is true? What if it isn't? What scenarios are we planning for? That brings in the context into the information, but the scenarios are important. And then
Hmm.
finally, it's the trends. Are we spotting the trends, the direction things are moving, not just where they stand today? So information without this fast can just be noise with some sort of confidence packaging. So you
Yeah.
have to be
Hmm.
very explicit about that. Facts, assumptions, scenarios, and trends. And that's where your information um, gets a strong foundation that is based on the data that you have traced.
Great.
And
And so connecting it, sorry, Joan, connecting it
yeah.
to in your work when you're applying these frameworks, speaking of context, are you applying these towards information you're getting from an LLM to support R&D, or like in what scenarios are you applying these frameworks
All of
in?
the above. It's just
Okay.
awareness. In let's say there was no generative AI and you weren't asking questions and all of that. You were thinking about it as you're going through it in a new product development process, let's say. But you kind of have this implicit in your mind that trends are going this way. Well, if they go this way, then or this way are the scenarios where we know that they need this, this, and this, and our assumption is about these, but these we need to validate, etc. Everybody kind of
Hmm.
knows that implicitly on the team. The thing about AI that I've noticed is it can offer you all sorts of different things that you didn't think of, didn't know, or don't really think are important because you have all of this knowledge in your head. So you know the context very well.
Yeah.
Somebody else can bring this up, and suddenly all your foundation could be teetering, and you're like, no, 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 no,
Mm.
no, no. So that's why I say you may know all of this and you can function well, but you got to think about AI now. So even that way, see if it helps you with information along these things. And if it doesn't, at least be clear about what they are so that it can't append either. So it's all of the above. It's just things we all
Great.
know, but we
More
need to
universal.
put them down. Yeah.
I just wanted to add, I find that assumptions are the thing often hardest to tease out, right? It's that all, we're fish in water and we don't know what water is. And scenarios are one of the tools we use to help people with finding the assumptions. So, by placing yourself in thought experiments that are different scenarios than your everyday, like geographically, temporally, culturally, whatever, you can say, well, okay, if this fact was in this other place in the world, is it still a fact? And that's how we can break some of that not being able to see the water we're swimming in. And it helps. And then tracking those assumptions, that's a practice we call out in the book. Put them on a whiteboard as you're moving through things and challenge them frequently. And every step of your process, be like, have we cleared any of these assumptions off our list?
Yep.
And what
Mhm.
new assumptions have emerged?
Yep.
I don't feel like it was anything I was ever explicitly taught in any of my education. And it's really something that's come from practicing innovation with people that have just been doing it for
Yep.
years.
That's just it. That's just it. I mean, I think about all my projects, different markets, different sectors, different technologies, because I've chased problems to solve. I have all these different things in my head, and here are the four things in my mind that are critical, and they're so tightly, to your point, Joanne, so tightly interlinked, and as you progress through that progression.
Yeah.
And then the next one, of course, is knowledge. And this can be problematic because different personas need or use knowledge differently.
Mm.
And no one particular function is really a monolith. We try to talk about them as monoliths because that's just easier. But different people will need and use knowledge differently. So I say angle for arcs. There are at least four arcs. The applied arc, and this is for your project managers and product engineers, people who need knowledge that drives execution. Then there's the responsive arc. And this is for, in R&D as well, your application engineers, your regulatory folks. I'm thinking about people who need knowledge to answer the question in front of them right now. The creative arc, this is for more of your inventors and product developers who need that knowledge to open new possibilities. And then the strategic arc for your IP analysts or the technology roadmap builder, people who need knowledge that positions the organization for what comes next. So I feel all these R&D professionals, my peers who I love, they all specialize in one primary arc, but breakthroughs sort of require all of these arcs working together. So if you deploy your AI and everyone needs the same knowledge and you assume everyone comes in the same form, same purpose, they don't. So it becomes one of those one size fits none, right? So you got to think about all these arcs: the applied, the responsive, the creative, and the strategic.
I love that. We do a lot of work. In addition to being co-founder at Regenerous Labs, I'm also co-founder of kind of a business transformation firm, and change enablement is a big part of what we do. And your arcs remind me of talking about, and it's really change enablement a lot of using AI-driven tools, right? Of the communication strategies or thinking or frameworks that people, as you think about their careers, and Joanne, you mentioned, like, I was never taught assumptions. Like, were we ever really taught of how you cascade information and think about people in different buckets and explaining to them? But I see the role as innovators and R&D leaders in just your communication and making sure the right people have the right information and knowledge into how it applies to them is a skill set that all of us could benefit from strengthening in a world where things are new and there's a lot of change and there's a lot of advancement. So I see this being so helpful, across many different teams and leaders and organizations and things that they're doing. So I absolutely love that it's thinking about knowledge and who needs what and when
Mhm.
to empower them to help them, but then to ultimately help R&D and innovation leaders drive their ideas forward. It's powerful.
Yeah, it's a very critical piece to get to wisdom. And this
Exactly.
is where the human element is the most irreplaceable and probably the most endangered. So for wisdom, I say you need to go with the flow, but
Mm.
not flow as in go with the current flow, but as in how the work is structured. So initially in these phases, we have to go with the workflow. Even in what we are doing, what did we do? We reflected on the workflow and common practices. We then recorded workflow scenarios and improvements. You can see the pain points in that. Review and rank them for where could AI help, where the researchers and the technical people are saying, yes, that's a pain point. And then what happens is when you reflect, record, review, rank, and all of that, and you make something available, suddenly you start seeing people are like, yeah, let's redesign around this because now this is applicable. So you're bringing people along, you're addressing their pain points, and now they have the agency to redesign the workflow where AI is applicable, and they can even reorganize around this as needed. You can't just flip a switch and say, ha ha, AI is here, please reorganize, would ya?
Yes.
Technical people ain't doing that, let me tell you. So, what I mean by flow is you have to be, by the nature of it, bit flexible and not fixed. Because one thing is for sure, AI doesn't just change jobs or whatever, it'll change them continuously. My latest thing is, and I'm writing about this, is it doesn't just change jobs. I think it changes the jobs to be done. That's the way to look at it. So a flexible
Mm-hmm.
mindset is so essential as jobs to be done will change once you have AI's help. Is it learning focused and not limiting focus? Because if you're learning it recognizes that there is this interdisciplinary thinking, and then very narrow focus right off the get-go will become a vulnerability, no doubt about that. And then is it opportunistic? Because you're using this AI, you know your workflow, but suddenly this surfaces something and you say, well, we can't do that because we decided we're going there. So you have to be opportunistic and not just, go with the orchestrated stuff. Because that'll help you seize emerging possibilities if you're opportunistic. And the last one is it winding and not just vertical? The reason why I say that, it goes back to some of the early stuff we talked about. Some of the failures, they're not really failures. They're just winding pathways that allow this learning trajectory, and it builds resilience over, oh my God, no, but that was our predetermined expectation and that's hindering progress. No, it doesn't work that way. And I feel about careers too. It's same go with the flow. Flexible, not fixed. Learning, not limiting focus. Opportunistic versus orchestrated, and winding versus vertical. So wisdom will also not travel in straight lines. So it'll accumulate through all your, detours and failures and unexpected connections. And any workflow with AI that is really rigid and linear and only efficiency driven will, I think, optimize away the conditions under which you really formulate wisdom. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, the technology is ready, the organization may not be. So the gap is largely human. And we have to help everyone on this DIKW journey. That's what's important, I think, because we've always had to do this, and now we have to do it with AI, and it brings its own promise and perils.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like there's a meta acronym to your acronyms, which is just genius. It's like fast arcs flow. And it reminds me of the analogy that everyday business is a river, innovation is an ocean. And so that swell and crash, swell again, it's the same water in the river and the ocean. It's just it's moving in different ways. And to your point about failure isn't failure, it's just that wave crashed and you've got to see what's left behind and then pick it up and bring it into the next wave. We have so many. I think it's fascinating. Everybody I meet in science and R&D and innovation engineering, well, less so. It kind of peters out in engineering. I'm going to be honest, as a mechanical engineer, and so is Taryn. I feel like the more science and R&D and arts focused folks have more mental images, more mental models, and we use analogies and metaphors more frequently in our work to build up these habits is what you're actually giving us all. Like you're giving us a playbook of habits we can form. And I feel like for some reason engineers lose some of that. And I can't speak about the rest of the world because I don't do those jobs, but and the other underline is, yeah, jobs to be done. That's a really cool way to think about what's actually changing in the AI world.
Well, I'm glad that resonates
Mm-hmm.
because I'm working on writing that one. So I'll look
Yeah.
forward to your like when
Yeah.
that one comes out.
Yeah, I love that too. The thing that stood out to me, Jayshree, I think what people often forget, this is one of the things we run into the most, is that You need technology and the people to drive real change, but they're moving at different paces. And
Right.
people confuse the pace at which technology is moving for the pace at which people are capable of moving. And
Yeah.
so people think, oh, this is easy. And if you're looking through a technical lens, if you're changing a job to be done, it may be technically easy. That does not mean that the behaviors needed to support that technical change are easy. They are still hard as as ever because we're humans
Yeah.
and we're wired and we have habits that have been formed and behaviors. And so it's like this perception that because the tech is moving fast, that people are naturally going to move fast is like time out. You need to go back to the knowledge and the wisdom and the thinking through and the change enablement side of everything that people are doing when it relates to AI. And so I think all those points were so valuable. I'm curious in your world, and as you kind of look across the data, information, knowledge, and wisdom, where are you seeing or which level do you see kind of most leaders get wrong when they're investing in AI and trying to reimagine their workflows with AI?
That's a good question. Most people would say data,
Mm,
skipping the rigor at the foundation, that's a problem. Yeah, it could be, but in the scientific field, I mean, yeah, everybody understands the importance of data. Of course, wisdom level is another problem because AI seemingly creates the illusion of wisdom.
mhm,
So that's where I gravitate towards. Think about the traditional hierarchy, DIKW, data at the base, then information, then knowledge, then wisdom at the top, and you really earn your way up. You just talked about human beings. Each level requires human judgment, human experience, human context to sort of ascend. What does AI do? I think AI can flip that pyramid. It done flipped it.
mm,
Suddenly, everyone has access to what looks like wisdom. I have this synthesized, confident, articulate conclusion that was delivered to me instantly. So, in some ways, you're starting at the top. You're starting at the answer before you've done the work of understanding the question. You have conclusions without really having the experimental breadcrumbs. You have output without actually doing this journey. And
mhm.
you know me by now, I've even thought about this inversion. When AI flips the pyramid, you don't get DIKW anymore, you get WIKD. And that's a wicked problem.
Wicked.
Sorry,
I
I
love
gotta have
it.
fun. I'm a very intense person. Of having fun. And when I thought about that, I was just like so hung up on it because it's just so cool. But it's
It
not
is
wicked
so
as in
cool.
bad. It is wicked as in what Joanne was saying, in an engineering sense. A wicked problem is one, where you know that the solution changes the problem. There's no single right answer. Every time you attempt it, it reveals new complexity. And that's exactly what happens when organizations start leading with this AI generated wisdom and are trying to work backwards. You think you're solving the problem, but
Mm,
actually you're redefining it in ways you don't even realize because you never did the foundational work of tracing the data and fast tracking your
mm,
information or having all the knowledge arcs built in. So the irony is what
mm,
that AI was supposed to solve wicked problems, but in the wrong hands with the right, without that right journey, it can actually create them. So
Yeah.
a question to ask is, are we starting at the bottom of wicked or are we starting at the bottom of DIKW? Because that can be two completely different organizations, and only one of them is really
mm,
building something that will last. And you really have to build the wisdom. Wisdom is where you are compelled to take action. Till now, this was all you're taking information, building insight, gearing up, but the wisdom is like, we're going to do this. So you have to be able to explain to someone why this, why now. What's in it for us? What's in it for me? And the what if.
Yeah.
And sometimes it is surprising when I read about, AI-based workflows and ROIs and you wonder what are they basing this on? How are they generalizing? Who is reading this and how are they assuming this all works? All this stuff out there. So it's interesting.
I,
mhm.
you just gave me an idea. We're writing a lot about behavior as the barrier because the lab is grounded in behavior science and just choice architecture, decision intelligence. We feel like navigating the future is going to rely on those concepts, those structures. And, I think the whole industry, I will say the whole employer world is wondering how do we develop new young talent in this new world? And I wonder if that inversion, accepting that that is happening, and then designing for a progression of data, information, knowledge, wisdom, almost against the grain of what is easy now, is how we set younger professionals up to grow and be the next level of wisdom keepers.
Mhm.
Because otherwise, I mean, we all went through the pain of not knowing anything, being thrown into it, figuring it out, learning from the elders.
Right?
And if we don't find a new way to create that experience, we're going to run out of people that know how to do things.
Yeah, and that's precisely why I was thinking about jobs to be done rather than AI changing jobs.
Yeah.
Some of the stuff that we labored through, they probably don't have to, but some of the things that they have to do in order to be going up this hierarchy is a completely new job to be done,
Yeah.
so mhm.
Mhm. Awesome. There's kind of two themes that are bubbling up a little bit, and we talked about these. There's kind of the difference between research and practice, which we started touching on as Jayshree, you were talking about, wisdom turns into action, right? I'm interested kind of how you think about that transition and maybe the gap even today, and then following that, there's another one between kind of business and technical and thinking through that. And you've done some work or collaboration with Rita McGrath on those two themes. So I'm curious. Let's start with research and practice and kind of compare and contrast where you see the gaps, and then we'll transition to business and technical, and then we'll kind of wrap it up with AI's role. One thing I do this every time. I forget to mention to the audience that we will take questions at the end of this. So if you have some you're sitting on or you wrote down, please send them in the chat and we will do our best to address them kind of as we wrap. So with that, Jayshree, research and practice.
Well, I can't claim to know everything about research and everything about practice, but I think the gap is probably wider now because we have more research faster and there's more confidence around it because of AI, I think. When I spoke at Thinkers 50, I said there are three problems, copy pasting, where people just take a framework and without adapting it to context or culture or capability, just try to use it. Catchphrases. This was the one where the language of an idea travels, but the substance doesn't. And so now you've got this bumper sticker, which replaces the real blueprint of what you should be doing. And then the third one was cherry picking, where you can selectively pull findings that confirm something that you already believe. And all three, I
Mm,
think, are still there. But I think the most important part that people are missing that needs to have a lot more is just what we talked about, and that is change management.
mm,
Change management, people don't resist bad ideas. They resist disruption to identity. They resist process and power and something
mhm.
that can threaten all three simultaneously. People are loath to accept that. So I think instead of just changing language, which is easy, behavior change is slow, as you mentioned. And that I think is the area that we need more research and more
Mhm.
practice and both coming together.
Yeah.
Because change management, that's where it's at. I really.
Yes, I agree. We're advising all of our partners, the clients, is saying you need to invest as much in change enablement as you do in the tech. And like it can't be a side project. So if you're going to invest in a new AI tool solution after you've done right some of the research, you have to be budgeting and thinking about change enablement, right? And maybe in a way that you never have before. Maybe in a
Mhm.
way that you need to new scale or upskill some of your team, or maybe you bring in a partner, right, and help them guide that. But those those two things, the tech and the change, have to be seen as equal in kind of today's world because we're seeing this overinvestment in the tech, and then people are like, well, it didn't really produce the results that we were
Yep.
hoping. It's like,
Yep.
because you forgot the whole other like
Yep.
half of this equation.
Yeah, I always say it's not a technology deployment challenge, it's a team development challenge,
Hmm.
right? I
Hmm.
think that's true. And
I
then
think that's so true.
the business and technical. So
It's
yeah,
in technical.
yeah, love Rita McGrath. I know Joanna's a big fan as well. So I was so excited to do my first Fast Company piece with her. And in that, we wrote about the business leaders and the technical leaders and how there is this chasm, which was fundamentally about mindset and time horizon. Everybody wants the exact same things, business value, but maybe business leaders want big bets, fast results, and technical people know that, science and research is cumulative and iterative, and you can't just command it. So we identified four big mistakes. Misdefining ambition, limiting collaboration, underestimating of technical challenges, and sort of dismissing the technical process. And so that was what we had written. And I think it is different now a little bit just in the few years that we wrote that, because the assumption is that the business people are speaking strategy and technical people are speaking science, and the translation layer is sort of the problem, the structural issue.
Mm.
But with AI,
Hmm.
you can narrow that gap, but I wonder if you deepen it. So now do you get a
Mm.
deeper gap? It sounds paradoxical, but think about it. A business leader can now sit at their desk and interrogate any technical concept. You can generate hypothesis, you can get together a patent landscape without having a single scientist in the room, right? So the access gap has
Mm.
narrowed, but it's probably
It's
deepened
interesting.
because now the judgment gap widens because everyone has access to the same AI generated synthesis. I can sit here and do a business strategy now, and it'll churn out five ideas. And if I'm a good prompter, I can, really drive it to something without really any functional knowledge about that field. So it all comes down to that wisdom and decision making for action. What separates good decision from not so good one is whether you have enough depth to know what the AI got wrong. So
Hmm.
that is to me very interesting and something
Very
I'm
interesting.
wrestling with. The other piece that I talked about was the exploitation and exploration in that piece with Rita we did. And does AI certainly sort of rev up exploitation even further because you can extract from your existing knowledge because AI is largely trained on existing knowledge? Does that
Hmm.
mean that you will never explore now because the temptation to even go there is like, who wants that when I can do this? So I think the real chasm has always been about this epistemic trust, if you will. Do you trust the reasoning enough to act on it? And I'm not sure if AI has bridged that, but it becomes now more urgent because the stakes for any kind of misplaced trust are just higher.
Hmm. Hmm.
The need for critical thinking and questioning is through the roof now. And you see the result of the lack of it when, like, a scenario that we went through at the lab. I'm going to fully admit this. I needed a service level agreement. I've written hundreds of them over my career, so I know basically what they need to be. I was like, I don't want to pay a lawyer. I'm going to write it with ChatGPT. I wrote this service level agreement, and because it's new and I'm not totally unaware, I did send it to the lawyer for review, and she was like, this is complete and utter nonsense. It sounds great, but if anybody questions what does this word mean, what does that phrase mean, that it will not hold up. And that's the thing about AI. It is thin, it's very superficial because it's taken all of this information and knowledge we've put into the internet over decades, and it averages it, it flattens it, and makes it probabilistic. And some things, many things in this world are deterministic. So using a probabilistic tool for a deterministic problem, like protecting IP in a service level agreement, is just a bad, it's the wrong tool for the job, right? And so I bring this up because questioning is one of those other things that we don't spend a lot of time anymore in what I think would have, probably shown up in the olden days as rhetoric, right? Like learning argument, learning debate, and how to ask questions. And I'll give a shout out. A friend of ours, Larry Robertson, four-time author, he has a book coming out next week called Great Question. And he did deep research on how people use and ask questions. And he put together, you'll love it, Jayshree, some frameworks on questioning to make it adoptable. So I think you're tapping into that. Again, we just weren't trained and educated broadly for this moment in technology adoption and business change.
Mhm.
The other thought that's coming to my mind, and we're seeing this happen, is AI can theoretically get you to the answers quicker in theory. And so people are kind of jumping to maybe that wisdom and leaping to action when they're feeling like the steps of the wrestling, and even as it relates to strategy building, they're kind of deprioritizing those. But what ends up happening in the long term is, because since people weren't part of that wrestling and that questioning and that pushing and the pulling, and they weren't building up their own insights and knowledge and wisdom along the way, that if a decision's made, they don't necessarily fully understand it. They don't fully understand why. They haven't really considered all the alternatives. And so while like they could say they're bought in, when you go to start executing on a decision or a strategy and you've skipped over the human work, even though AI can help you analyze it, but you've skipped over that, it takes you actually so much longer in the long run and probably doesn't produce the value, because you may have shrunk the time to get to a decision, but now you have a whole set of team or people that are not fully aligned, don't fully understand it, maybe question it, which limits their ability to actually drive that meaningful action towards it. So in the long run, you stretch
Yeah.
it out, it becomes a heck of a lot harder to move things forward. Misalignment shows up all over the place. And so there's like, I need sharper words and thinking, but it's like we can't, just because we have tools to analyze the data, doesn't mean we skip over the wrestling, especially as it relates to strategy and decision making and everything else. We can't skip that step because the downstream impacts of it are so significant that you don't almost realize it until it's too late.
Yeah, and I think technical people actually are doing a great service because of the way they're trained. I mean,
Mm,
if you think about something that is going to be untenable, this whole show me the money, where leaders may believe that, AI can accelerate all processes, so I should deliver big outcomes, and, that should be seen. But I think it's strong at the breadth and really brittle at precision, is what I've heard
Yeah.
that people
hmm
have referred to it. And it's absolutely true. And that's why when I'm talking about generative AI in R&D with my peers, I refer to it as artificial diligence, because it
Yeah.
is not really intelligent. I think of it as diligent. It'll do the things that you ask it to do
Mm,
without complaining. So the word intelligence itself can be off-putting. So it is artificial diligence. And in R&D, precision matters. And a confident wrong answer isn't a better answer than no answer. It's worse. So instead of
Right.
show me the money,
hmm
it's show me the source. And that I think is important, is it brings all this. So the people who really will be successful, who are seeing that, okay, I get it. I need to show up differently, not with mandates for adoption, but with better judgment about where and how I can use generative AI. And
hmm
say that skepticism is a signal, it's not a setback. I'm going to honor the workflow, not just the said tool. I'm going to own the timeline, not the hype. And I'm going to win with ingenuity, not just this efficiency. So that's
hmm
another framework of mine. I'm sure you figured that out. But we can bridge the chasm, all these chasms that we talked about, if we go and show that progress.
Okay, awesome. This is, I think, a great segue maybe into some questions from the audience here. So we just started touching on this theme, but there was an article put out by Fortune magazine in May, just a couple days ago, May 24th, with the title "AI Hallucinations Are Infiltrating Expert Work and Entering the Permanent Body of Knowledge." The audience members just kind of interested, Jayshree, in hearing your thoughts, on this topic, and then maybe any tactical ideas for how we can create more helpful friction, like in these processes as we're maximizing the tech. So, kind of a big theme there, but really interested just to hear your thoughts on that
Yeah,
topic.
it's my thought is it's scary. It's scary. Because then work slop gets even worse. With stuff that is really something that cannot be trusted at all. And that's why good practices like tracing your data, tracking your information fast, building the knowledge arcs, that those are just the good practices that we'll have to have. And even in the work that we're doing, where we are creating these modalities that can help the R&D folks, the fact that you need to be able to pinpoint the source is extremely important. And we're jumping through hoops to make sure that piece is there, because that
Hmm.
verifiable fact and the source that it comes from is extremely important. We don't need no creativity in certain parts where we really need to do that. So I think
Hmm.
a dose of skepticism and the healthy skepticism that science teaches you and that you bring, I think is again something that we have to nourish and nurture, because we will all need
Hmm.
that. By the same token, it creates a level of mistrust and distrust that we don't need. So
Yeah.
this is going to be the very interesting sort of shift in how people think and what they trust and what they don't trust and why, which is going to shake us a little bit, I think. And there'll be
Hmm.
surprises and pitfalls along the way. And that's why relying on your own critical thinking, as Joanne was bringing up, is it becomes paramount.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Hmm.
These frameworks, you have more than 50 in your trilogy of books, which I have and have read and love because I'm a framework geek too. Frameworks, some stick, some don't, some, really get adopted at scale. What do you, what makes the difference? Like I said, fast arcs flow. I'm never forgetting that now. But what have you seen? Like, how do we help the people helping other people come into this new way of working together, use these things? How do we make them travel?
Yeah, trace is the first one for data is trace.
I know,
You know,
but trace fast
flow.
arcs flow.
Yes. I think about this often because I absolutely love frameworks, and I think a framework travels when it names something that people already feel but couldn't say. So if someone hears it and thinks, "Yeah, that's exactly what's happening," that's halfway adopted, recognition. The second thing is I think it has to be memorable. And I struggle with trying to be too clever or too cute. And I'm careful now to not just make it clever, but sometimes I do just because I love it. Hey, what the heck?
Well, Wicked nailed it.
Yeah,
Wicked
Yeah.
nailed it
there we
with the
go.
clever.
And it doesn't carry weight, but it'll likely not be forgotten. So the ones that stick, honestly, though, have some internal logic, some resonance, and everything has earned its place. And a third one, I think, which is the difficult, is that framework has to give someone permission to act differently. So what I mean is it's not just naming the quiet part out loud, which I love doing, but also voicing what can be done differently. And I wouldn't say all my frameworks have that. Some just name the game, some play the game, some change the game. So you can afford to when you have more than 50, right? And thank you for mentioning my books. Can I tell the audience a
Yeah,
little bit about them?
please.
Okay.
Please.
So it's the Heart of Science series. They have frameworks from mundane stuff to, demystifying leadership, etc. And they follow what I call the real STEM: skills, talent, expertise, and mindset. So practical strategies to enhance skills, things like problem solving, ideation, communication, trends and tactics to empower all of us to create a ecosystem with a robust talent pipeline of STEM. Tasks and templates about, cultivating essential qualities for effective leadership, which is beyond your functional expertise. And then tools and techniques for a mindset of continuous growth and self-discovery. And the best part is all proceeds from the sales of all my books go to a scholarship for women in STEM, and it is administered by Society of Women Engineers. And I'm happy to share with your audience that 7 scholars have been supported so far. And I
That's
can't wait to
Oh,
hear
amazing.
that's great.
what happens this upcoming school year. And it's so important because everyone goes about their business thinking one person can't make a difference. And what I've learned is that you can. It's because others join in. So I wrote the books, people bought them. Now we have the opportunity to impact others people's lives, and it'll only grow from there. So please buy the books on Amazon. It's just not what you take away, it's also what you give back. You give the gift of education. And I think it's the best gift you can ever give.
What was
Absolutely.
the name again, Jayshree, of your book
It's
series for those that
Heart of
missed it?
Science. It's the Heart of Science
okay.
trilogy, engineering footprints, fingerprints, and imprints. Then it's the fine print and then the blueprint.
Love
You
it.
just are a grandmaster of the turn of phrase,
I love words.
which is awesome for someone in, again, for the sciences and technology fields. Loving words just gives you such a powerful other quiver, right? In the other arrow in the quiver.
Absolutely.
And
Absolutely. But that's
it's how you
because I was
spread
such an
ideas.
unlikely candidate for STEM. But that's what I want to tell people, and especially to women. You may feel like you're an unlikely candidate for a certain path, but bring your superpowers and you will see what it can do. And that's really my story. I always wanted to be in humanities, arts, and social sciences and all that kind of stuff that I really gravitated towards because of the human context there. But it turned out I did all right in engineering, and I'm bringing all my skills to that. So we really have to be careful about how we train, track, typify, and even talk about STEM. We need to start focusing on the skills, talent, expertise, mindset, and bring a lot more people in because I tell you, that's what true innovation will actually need.
Mhm.
You and I both um, stay away from the typical application of STEM. So I focus on STEAM because I feel like without the arts, where, science, technology, engineering, arts, and mathematics, without philosophy and literature and theater and music, well, I don't want to live in that world. Like,
Mhm.
what a plain world that would be if we didn't have all those things.
Yep.
And I say that as a mechanical engineer. Taryn's a mechanical engineer. Kemi on our team is a mechanical engineer, and we have actually one guy who's an engineer, a mechanical engineer, Kevin, on our team. So
Yep.
3 engineering women in this group.
Wonderful.
Mhm.
Yeah, I love to
That's
say the real
amazing.
shtick is STEM, science, humanities, technology, engineering, and math.
Hmm.
I can give you my
Love it.
spiel. The real shtick is STEM. So,
That is so good.
Well, Jayshree, thank you so much for spending some time with us. I love this conversation. I know others did too, and we value your time and thank you. We know you're busy and driving impact in so many different areas. So again, just thank you for sharing your wisdom with us and everybody who tuned in. It was remarkable.
thank you. Thank you so
Thank you
much
so
for
much,
having me.
Jayshree.
All right. Have a great afternoon, everybody. Think through those frameworks, and we'll share them in our follow-up emails as well, along with Jayshree's link to her book.
Absolutely.
All right. Bye-bye.